I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to post something like this, but lately, I can't sleep. I can't breathe. I wake up in cold sweats, remembering the look on his face, that dead stare, filled with so much quiet rage it made my heart stop. I didn't realize a man could go that silent, that cold, and still somehow be screaming inside. What I did, what I suggested, was something I thought would save us, but I destroyed everything. And in return, he didn't scream, he didn't throw things, he didn't even raise his voice. He just took his revenge in a way I never saw coming. Our marriage wasn't always broken. In fact, for the first 5 years, it was damn near perfect. My husband, Mark, not his real name, was attentive, stable, emotionally intelligent, and fiercely loyal. He worked hard, came home early, rubbed my feet after bad days, and made it clear I was his whole world. We never really fought, aside from the little squabbles that passed like clouds. But about a year ago, something started to shift in me. I started feeling invisible. Not because of anything he did. In fact, it was the opposite. He loved me too perfectly. And in some twisted, ungrateful corner of my mind, I began to crave the chaos I thought I had outgrown. I stumbled across a podcast one day. You know the kind. Empowerment. Sexual liberation. Don't let monogamy cage you. At first, it was just something I listened to during walks, but soon I started seeking out stories. People who opened up their marriages and claimed to be happier than ever. It sounded freeing, exciting, like some evolved version of adulthood I hadn't unlocked yet. I told myself I was doing research, that I'd never actually consider it. But deep down, a seed had been planted, and it was growing fast. A few months before our 8th anniversary, I started hinting at the idea. I'd say things like, have you ever thought about what it would be like to be with someone else? Or monogamy isn't natural, you know. Mark would always laugh and shake his head. You're more than enough, he'd say, every single time. I should have taken that as my answer. I should have dropped it. But the truth is, I didn't want agreement. I wanted permission. And when I didn't get it, I decided to force the conversation anyway. Our anniversary was supposed to be a quiet dinner at home. We never did anything big. We weren't flashy people. I cooked his favorite meal, wore a red dress I knew he loved, and lit candles like I was preparing for something romantic. But instead of giving him a gift, I handed him a conversation. I told him I wanted to open the marriage, just for a little while. To explore, I said. To grow. He sat there, fork in hand, not moving, not breathing, just blinking at me, like he didn't recognize the woman across the table. And maybe in that moment he didn't. At first, he didn't speak, just leaned back, pushed his plate away gently, and looked at me like I was a stranger who'd walked into his home uninvited. Finally, he said, "You want to fuck other people?" No anger, no tremble, just that cold, even tone that hurt worse than shouting ever could. I told him it wasn't about that I still loved him, that I just felt stagnant. He stared at me for a long time before saying, "So you want permission to cheat, but dressed up in therapy words." I felt heat crawl up my neck. I tried to explain, tried to pull out the podcast phrases I'd memorized. Mutual fulfillment, sexual expansion, trust beyond possession. But he just stood up, walked into the kitchen, and poured himself a drink. The silence was deafening. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. He slept on the couch. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, convinced I'd just made a mistake, but still too prideful to admit it. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. I thought maybe he needed space, that he'd come around, that if I just gave him time, we could revisit the conversation. But I underestimated him. I underestimated the depth of the cut I'd made. And most of all, I underestimated just how calmly a man can prepare for war while pretending he's at peace. Over the next week, Mark was pleasant. Too pleasant. He brought me coffee in the mornings, kissed my forehead before work, asked me about my day, but something in his eyes was gone. That soft warmth I'd taken for granted had been replaced by something harder, something calculating. I was too caught up in guilt and confusion to see the storm brewing behind his smile. He didn't mention the conversation again, and that scared me more than if he'd yelled. Then came the bomb. A week later, he told me he'd thought about it and was open to the idea on one condition. No rules, he said. If we're opening it all the way. No questions, no guilt. I hesitated, but said yes. I thought I had won, that he was evolving like I hoped, that we'd come out the other side stronger. But what I didn't realize is, he was already plotting something that would shatter me to the core, and I walked right into it, thinking I was free. 3 days later, he came home smelling like a different perfume. Not the kind I wore, not subtle, not hidden, just bold and unapologetic. I asked, and he shrugged. "You said we're open now." I smiled through the burn in my throat, told myself this was what I wanted, what I'd asked for. But every time he left the house, I felt sick, my stomach in knots, my mind running wild with images I couldn't control. And the worst part? He never lied, never snuck around. He'd text me details, send pictures, show me receipts. Every move he made sure I knew. At first, I told myself this was good, that it was healthy, that we were now equals. But it wasn't the same, not even close. I had opened the marriage hoping to taste freedom, hoping to chase a high I couldn't describe, but I hadn't planned for him to enjoy it. I thought he'd resist, maybe even struggle, but he dove in like he'd been waiting for an excuse, and that stung in a way I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't just that he was sleeping with other women, it was how good he was at it. The ease, the confidence, the way he stopped asking me for anything, like I no longer mattered at all. One night he came home late, around 2 a.m. I was up waiting, pacing the kitchen, pretending to be calm. When he walked through the door, his shirt was half buttoned, and he had lipstick smudged on his neck. I asked, was she worth it? He looked at me with that same cold expression and said, she was enthusiastic, grateful even. Then he walked past me without another word. That broke me. I went into the bathroom and cried quietly into a towel, but I didn't let him hear it. I couldn't give him that satisfaction. From then on, he stopped making an effort with me entirely. No more morning coffee, no more kisses, no more shared laughs. He was polite, almost robotic. I became a roommate, not a wife, but I couldn't say anything, could I? I was the one who asked for this. I was the one who unlocked the door, handed him the keys, and smiled like I understood what I was doing. I thought I could handle it. I was dead wrong. Then, I made the biggest mistake yet. I tried to play the game too. I downloaded the apps, set up a few dates, but every man I met felt hollow, boring, immature. None of them made me feel the way Mark used to, not even close. One guy tried to kiss me, and I pulled away. Another asked if I was married, and I lied. But I couldn't bring myself to go through with anything. I realized I didn't want other men. I just wanted him, and I had destroyed that without even knowing how or why. When I told Mark I hadn't slept with anyone, he just shrugged. Your choice. That was all he said. No jealousy, no curiosity, just indifference. And somehow that hurt even more than betrayal. I tried to reach out after that, started cooking his favorite meals again, wore the clothes I knew he liked, put on his favorite music in the evenings, but he didn't respond. He'd eat silently, thank me with a nod, and retreat to the guest room where he had started sleeping a few nights a week. Then came the night everything collapsed. I came home from work and found him in the living room, shirtless, sprawled on the couch with a woman I didn't recognize. She was laughing, her legs across his lap, sipping wine from my favorite glass. They looked up when I entered, and she smirked. You must be the wife, she said. My heart dropped. I turned to him, expecting a reaction, an apology, a flicker of guilt. But he just looked at me and said, she wanted to meet the one who gave me this freedom. Then he kissed her, slowly, deeply, in front of me. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. My skin was pale, my eyes sunken, my soul gutted. This wasn't empowerment. This wasn't liberation. It was self-destruction disguised as progress, and I had handed him the weapon he used to annihilate me, smiling as I did it, thinking I was enlightened. Later that night, I tried to confront him, tried to tell him this had gone too far, that I wanted to close the marriage again, that I missed us. He didn't even flinch, just leaned back, crossed his arms and said, you don't get to unspill a glass of wine, sweetheart. I froze. He'd never called me that sarcastically before. I realized, right then, that he hadn't forgiven me. Not even a little. He was just waiting, biding his time, making me feel every ounce of betrayal I had forced on him, and doing it with terrifying precision. The next morning, he handed me a manila folder. Inside were divorce papers, already signed, already notarized. You opened the marriage, he said, so I'm opening the door. I broke. I begged, literally got on my knees and told him I'd made a mistake, that I was stupid, that I thought it would help us grow. He knelt down, lifted my chin gently and said, "You didn't want to grow. You wanted permission to fail, and now you've got it." Then he stood up and walked away. I've never felt so hollow. The house is quiet now. He moved out a week ago, took nothing but his clothes and his guitars, left me with memories and silence. Our anniversary card still sits on the nightstand, unsigned. I pick it up sometimes and wonder what he would have written if I hadn't ruined everything with one reckless idea. And the truth? I don't blame him, not even a little. After he left, I stopped eating properly. I'd open the fridge, stare at the full shelves, and walk away. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful, it was deafening. His absence wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. The rooms felt colder, the bed felt like a punishment. Every space I entered echoed with moments we used to share. Brushing teeth side by side, laughing while doing dishes, dancing barefoot in the kitchen to some old playlist. Now it was just me and the consequences. I tried calling him a few times, he never answered. Didn't block me, but he didn't reply either. Just left me on read, like I didn't deserve even the decency of a no. And maybe I didn't. I started writing him letters, never sent them, just poured out pages of apologies, admissions, memories, desperate promises. But writing them only made the emptiness louder. It reminded me that the damage wasn't just emotional, it was fundamental. I had burned down a home and expected him to warm himself in the ashes. 2 weeks after he left, I ran into one of his friends at the grocery store. The guy looked at me like I was a ghost, asked how I was holding up. I could barely respond. He just nodded and said, "He really loved you. You know that, right?" I nodded back, blinked fast, and hurried down the frozen aisle before I broke down in front of the peas. That night, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not because I was lonely, but because I realized I had taken real love and traded it for an idea, a fantasy, a selfish, short-sighted experiment that detonated everything in its path. A week later, I got a letter in the mail, from him. Not typed, handwritten, the same careful penmanship he used to write me notes back when we were dating. My heart stopped. I sat on the floor and read it slowly, trembling. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't angry, it was surgical. He told me he had loved me deeply, that I had been his safe place, his person, but that the moment I turned our marriage into a growth project, something inside him had died, not all at once, but gradually, and by the time I realized it, it was too late to save. He ended the letter by saying, "I don't hate you, I don't wish you pain, but I won't ever come back. Some boundaries once crossed, never return to their original shape." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer with the others. That sentence etched itself into my mind like a scar. I whispered it to myself while lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Over and over, some boundaries never return to their original shape. People online talk about open marriages like they're some kind of utopia, but they don't tell you the full truth. They don't tell you about the aftermath, about the way it can destroy something sacred, about how once trust has a crack, even if it's hairline, it starts to crumble. I chased something shiny, thinking I was enlightened, but what I was greedy. I wanted the safety of Mark's loyalty with the thrill of something wild. I thought I could have both. I ended up with neither. He's dating now, I heard. A mutual friend told me she's smart, grounded, and makes him laugh the way I used to. I smiled when I heard that, but there was a knife twisting beneath it. Because as much as I want him to be happy, I also wish I had been enough. I wish I hadn't gone looking for more when I already had everything. And now, I sit here writing this, alone in a quiet house that used to be full of love, and realize I traded gold for dust. If you're reading this, and you're tempted to open something that isn't broken, please, for the love of everything good, think twice. Not everything needs fixing. Not everything needs evolving. Sometimes, what you have is rare and precious, and the worst thing you can do is treat it like it's replaceable. I learned that too late. And that's the thing about mistakes this big. They don't just change your life, they redefine you. I'm not the woman I used to be. I'm the woman who threw away the love of a man who would have walked through fire for me because I wanted to flirt with matches and he let me. And then he walked away while I watched everything burn. And now I sit here with nothing but memories, paper apologies, and a silence I earned all by myself.